You are listening to Exploring Sacred with your host, Denise Iwana Francisco, on the Temple Within Radio and Digital Media Network, giving voice to the sacred.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Exploring Sacred and welcome to a beautiful brand new day. It's great to have you with me this morning. The chat room is now officially opened, so please do come on in and enjoy being together with others of like mind to talk about the voices that speak to us from the silence. One of my favorite subjects, talking about those voices that speak to us in our dreams and in our intuition and our daydreams. And sometimes it seems right out from the middle of the ethers, the voices that speak to us. I happen to believe that everything around us, seen and unseen, is very much alive, is very animated with the love, the light, and the energy of the Creator. And not only does it listen to everything that we do, it watches what we do, it feels what we do, and it responds, in both the seen and the unseen world. I don't think that anything that we do happens in a vacuum. I don't think that anything we do is confined only to our experience, but that it has a ripple effect. And depending on what's going on in our lives or in our mind or any of those situations we find ourselves in, our reaction and actions cause a reaction and actions from the other side. And oftentimes we are receiving assistance from the unseen realms as well as the seen realms. You know, the other day I was having a wonderful conversation with somebody about mysticism and what it means to be a mystic, and why some of us are born into a life where the mystery and really delving into the mysteries of life is kind of a mission, the purpose of our life, and also, at least in my case, to help other people understand the mysteries and to embrace being a modern day mystic, or at least to open themselves up to the possibility that there might be something else going on in this world other than exactly what's going on in front of their nose and in their physical space. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And so please do join me in the chat room. I'm going to go ahead and post that on the Exploring Sacred page. There we go. And also, recently I have been asked many, many times by people, particularly clients that come here to the home, Denise, other than checking on Facebook every now and again, is there a place or a way that we can get reminders about upcoming classes and special events and speaking engagements other than going on Facebook? And the answer to that is yes. If you subscribe to my website, denisefrancisco.com, you will receive once a month a flyer, an e-flyer that highlights what's going on at the school or at the Temple Within with myself. And, I'm one of those people, I don't like a lot of junk in my email either, so I limit it to one flyer per month. So if you're okay with receiving one email flyer from the School of Sacred Studies per month, it might be a good way for you to receive notices and reminders about things that are going on. So check it out at denisefrancisco.com. Good morning, Jill. Hey, Rob, Becca, Janet. Hey, Janet. Lady Hawk, birthday girl, is in the house. Love that. All right, so let's talk about the voices that speak to us. Let's talk about where they come from. Wasn't that long ago, I don't think, in recent history, that if anybody said they were hearing voices in their head, right, that would raise an eyebrow and might find you taking a trip to the doctor to find out what was imbalanced in your life or in your brain. And those imbalances do occur. I'm not negating that there are mental illnesses that include the hearing of voices. So I'm not saying that that isn't real as well. But the vast majority of communications from spirit, I believe, are just that, communications from spirit. And I have always said, and I still believe to this day, that some of the most gifted seers and sensitives in the universe were locked away in psychiatric hospitals here in the West because of a lack of understanding, because of ignorance around the subject of spiritual talents, the charismata specifically. Hearing the voices sometimes is a very spontaneous thing that happens. I was having lunch with two very dear old friends this week, and one of the ladies at the lunch, I have been friends with her since I was 5 years old, since my dad was stationed in Vietnam, and the military moved the family back to Michigan for that year that he was deployed. So we have been friends since I was 5 years old. And my other friend, Julie, we'd been friends since high school, working at the newspaper together. And Barbie said to me, Dee, don't you remember when you were little? You used to love that swing set in our backyard, especially the swing that's kind of like a teeter-totter thing. And don't you remember when you were little that you would just swing in that swing and you would sing? She said you really had a very nice voice when you were a little girl. I remember that. I don't know where that went, but at least it happened when I was younger. Funny. And she said you would sing and sing and sing, and I would ask you, Dee, who are you singing to? And your response was always the same. Well, I'm singing to them. To the ghosts? To ghosts? Yes, I'm singing to them. And Barbie reminded me about that at lunch on Monday. I was singing to the children that I could see. I was seeing children there in her backyard around the swing set that obviously she and my other friends at that time, who were older than me, could not see. And she said, you sang and you were so joyful, and everybody knew you were seeing something. We couldn't see it, but that was just you. So we accepted that that's just the way that you were, that you were singing to something or someone. And as it turned out, her mother was also very intuitive. Very intuitive. So it all kind of goes hand in hand, whether you're literally listening and seeing to those who exist beyond the physical veil, or a spontaneous event. So my other friend said, my husband's never believed in any of this. He thinks it's a big old bunch of hogwash and hooey. She said that was until her sister passed away. And they went down south to attend her nephew's wedding. And all of a sudden, in the motel room or the hotel room, a voice shouted her name. A voice out of the silence shouted her name. And Julie said, well, I wonder if she's out in the hallway, whoever this person is yelling for me. And they opened the door and there was no one in the hallway. There was no one else in the room. And she said, now I know I heard somebody say my name right out loud. And her husband had to admit, finally, he looked at her and he said, I heard it too. I heard it too. It was very clear. One of them said to me, Dee, is your life exhausting? Always walking in both worlds? And I said, well, I've learned how to deal, or I should say honor my sensibilities, my sensitivities, my sensibilities, all of it, by resting more, having really good boundaries in my life. Otherwise, it would be exhausting. But, I said, isn't it exciting to know that those voices that we hear, whether they're right out loud or the voice of your intuition that says, go this way and not that way. Good morning, Cindy. That those voices are attached to something. They belong to something. Well, what do they belong to? Well, if we hear a voice right out loud in the middle of nowhere, and yet we hear it, and that's happened to me a million times over, and I'm sure for many of you listening, it's happened as well. And maybe you're listening because you're wondering, what the heck was that? It very well could be a loved one who is projecting their voice across the veil. It takes a lot of energy to do that, from what I understand. They tell me. It takes a lot of energy to muster up a voice that can penetrate the veil of silence. And so sometimes that energy is gained, we'll just say, from electronics around the house, or our energy. But they muster up enough energy from energy sources around them in order to make that happen. And usually it's around the time that we've lost someone to death that we love, and they're very much alive, and maybe that is their way of saying, I'm right here. I'm right here. And sometimes, in order to, while we're awake, we can have those very same experiences when we're sleeping in the dream time. And again, sometimes we can be dreaming and the voice will penetrate the veil of silence and physicality. At that point, when we're resting, that's exactly what we're doing. We're resting. We're not worrying about all of the things that are detailed in living a human life. And our loved ones will reach out to us to say, I'm here, I'm okay, or I'm here, I'm unwell, I need prayers, or I'm here, I could be well, but you need to let me go, right? A variety of communications happened when someone that we love has left their physical body. And sometimes we can have a disturbing dream, and sometimes the disturbing dream that we have about our loved one is really our own way of reconciling within us a loss that can be very, very tremendous and life-altering. Sometimes I think one of the most interesting voices that we hear out of the silence is the voice that does roll around in our own head. And I know that most of you probably know what I mean, because you ask yourself, was that just me? Or was that somebody else talking to me? Because it kind of sounded like me, but I really don't use those words, but that really was my voice, so I'm confused. I don't know who that was or what that was or why it was. Many times when we hear the voice of a loved one in our head, people will attribute it to taking a stroll down memory lane. They remember how mom sounded. They remember how dad sounded. They remember how their friend sounded or coworker. And they'll chalk it up to, oh, I'm just daydreaming again. But boy, it sure did sound like them. Well, I'm here to tell you that it really doesn't take a special talent for us to receive a message from the other side. We are all wired for it. I think the special talent that is required is being open to it and receiving it. Sometimes that voice may not sound like our friend, but it is the wording that our friend would use. Perhaps they had their own lingo, or they had their own favorite catchphrases that only they could say in the style that they would say it. And why does it sound like our voice? Well, because they're using our vehicle. They're using our brain, our octaves, our notes, our vibrations personally. So maybe there just wasn't enough energy to have that southern drawl come through, right? Or British accent. But what did come through is the uniqueness and the cadence of their speaking patterns. And a feeling of love. See, that's the thing. Whether it sounds like your voice reiterating what a friend would have said, or the voice of a friend who has crossed over coming through loud and clear, the talents needed are an open heart and an open mind. And not only that, an acceptance. An acceptance. That these things happen. They're not scary. At least they're not scary for me. It might be scary for others the first time. Only time it was scary, I think, was when I was a little girl. And sometimes things were very frightening then. But the acceptance means this: thank you for letting me know that you're okay. Thank you for letting me know that you need more prayers. Thank you for letting me know that I've held you in my grief for too long. I will work on letting you go. And it's not maybe that they're gone forever, but our sorrow, when it goes on for years on end, holds our loved ones back. If our sorrow is as deep and grievous 10 years down the road as it was the moment of its occurrence, then, we need help. We need a counselor. We need a therapist. We need assistance. Our grief, our sorrow can be like boulders and stones in the pockets of those that we love who are trying to make their way back to the realms of the ancestors, but are held by these big old boulders of tears and guilt and shame. And right, we have to honor that the voice is attached to somebody who is still very much alive and somebody who is still learning and having their way and experiencing life, even if it is in their spiritual body, our most glorious body, making their way to the realms of the ancestors. It's like when our kids go away to college, university. We miss them. Oh, we wish they could be, with us. Once they're out of the nest, then we can miss them, right? But we don't want to hold them to coming to the house every weekend because we know that our children need to continue to learn, to become, to progress, to become the most and the best that they can be. The same thing is true with those we love who have crossed over. They are still continuing the walk to the realm of the ascended or enlightened or healed ancestors. Okay. Hey, Katie Battle. Hey, Jessica Clark. Nicole is saying, I hadn't felt Mom since she died. And then a few weeks ago, a song she loved that I hadn't thought of since I was a teenager just came out of my mouth. Send in the clowns. Oh, Judy Collins. It stopped me in my tracks and I just cried. Exactly, Nicole. Exactly. And every time I think of her, Mrs. Holt, whenever I hear Stairway to Heaven, right, whether it's Zeppelin singing Stairway to Heaven or Heart doing their tribute Stairway to Heaven, it always stops me in my tracks. And the very first person I think of is Mrs. Holt, because that woman stayed in line 7 hours in 1977. 7 hours so that me and Kelly Spencer could go see Led Zeppelin. And back then, believe it or not, everybody, the tickets were only $15 a piece. But she stood in that line for 7 hours so that Kelly and I, who were 15 at the time, could go see Led Zeppelin at the St. Paul Civic Center. Fond memory. It was an amazing evening. And I knew, even at 15, the amount of love that she had to stand in that line for that long, so that us girls would have a wonderful experience in seeing Led Zeppelin. You are absolutely right about that. Crazy, Patsy Cline, my Aunt Mary Lou, anything by Patsy Cline. Those are also the voices that come to us from the silence. Sometimes they are attached to a song. Sometimes it will be attached to a bit of a movie or a show, right? We'll turn on Netflix or Hulu or what have you, and a show will come on right at a pinnacle of, or right at the point of saying something so succinct, a favorite line that a friend loved or a relative loved. And sometimes the voices will also send items. The other day, my dad, the Sarge, always sends copper pennies. Always sends copper pennies. And they come out of the most amazing places. The other day I was up at the stables taking care of the horses. And Tussie she wears a face mask because of the skin cancer. And that little bugger managed to get her fly mask off. And there it was in a big old pile of horse poop. So I picked it up. I brought it home. I scrubbed it outside. Scrub, and hung it out to dry in the sun. A couple hours later, I was getting ready to go back to the stable, and I thought, well, I better grab that fly mask so she has a clean one on her face right now. And I flipped it over, and out of one of the ear flaps dropped a copper penny. Now, I know that copper penny was not in that ear flap, either in the pile of poop that the fly mask had been laying in a few hours prior, nor was it there when I very carefully scrubbed that ear cover. But there it was, by golly. And it dropped right down on my feet. Huh. I said, hey, Sarge, I love you too. Thanks for being with me. And I really had a great time sharing that story then with Tussie when I was putting her fly mask back on. I said, hey, guess who visited today? I made an event out of it. I was grateful for it. I know it's not a one and done. This is a way of living for me. It can be a way of living for everybody when we recognize that the voice of our intuition is something we need to pay attention to. The voices in our dreams, the voices in our daydreams, the wonderful music that comes on. Katie Battle is saying, the smell of coffee reminds me of my mom. Oh, yeah. It's like when I get a whiff of Old Spice cologne, like, does anybody even wear the Old Spice? That was my dad's thing. If I smell Old Spice, I know my dad is around. And the smell of Old Spice, the original one, not all the snazzy stuff that's out there right now, it makes me feel so comforted to smell that. So comforted. And you are right, Nicole. She was a very giving woman. A very giving woman. A beautiful woman. Physically and mentally, emotionally, spiritually. A beautiful woman. Every so often, somebody will ask me, what difference does it make? And why would anybody want to hear from relatives and friends who have passed on? They're dead. Why would anyone care to hear from them? What's the importance of that? Well, that always makes me raise both of my eyebrows, really. And my answer has always been, because you know what? Even though we know those we love continue on, and eventually, we will all be back together again, I think it's really nice to have a dream, to have the voice come through, to have a vision, an apparition. Ever have one of those experiences where you can feel someone that you love sitting on your bed? Right? Those things are real. Rob is saying, I've had experiences where I felt someone telling me not to move. I was 17. I sat a long time at a green light while my friend was yelling at me to go. Finally, a speeding car heading south ran that red. There you go. Yes. Those are the voices you want to listen to. And we don't have to necessarily explain it to everybody else why we are doing what we're doing. Years ago, I've talked about the time I was hit by a semi driving down the East Beltline. It was my Aunt Mary Lou's voice that said, duck. And she said it with such fervence, or fervor, I ducked. And I'm glad I did, or I would have been beheaded. I ducked. And for me, I think the comfort in that really is the understanding that our loved ones, including our furry and feathery loved ones, really are only a vibration, a tone, or an octave away. Somebody asked me the other day, excuse me, I need some coffee. Hey, Nikki. Good to see you in the house from the Heartful Art Studio. I have the same experience with Giorgio perfume from my friend Fawn. Yeah. Isn't that great? It's so alchemical. I mean, think about that. Isn't it magnificent? See, these things excite me. Isn't it magnificent that those that we love are so alive They are so alive on the other side that they can alchemically and with great love push through the scent of Giorgio or Old Spice or a myriad of other scents. They can make sure that we're in the right place at the right time to hear the perfect song, or they will begin the thought of that song in our mind, right? Whenever that happens, exactly what Nicole is talking about, send in the clowns. Whenever that happens to me, the Sarge always really liked Don Williams. I Believe in You, that song, Don Williams. He loved country and western music. And he also liked Conway Twitty. And every so often, I will hear that song begin to play in my head. I believe in love, I believe in babies, you know. And I think to myself, oh, my dad is walking right next to me. He must be singing that song, and I'm hearing him sing that song. I'm hearing him sing that song because I'm hearing that song in my mind. I believe that song is coming from him, singing it to me. He loved that song. Spent a lot of time up at the lake around the campfire listening to Don Williams, right? And Conway Twitty, Loretta Lynn, all that good stuff, Patsy Cline. For me, anyway, the Matrix, yeah, Lord, I hope this day is good. That was another one that Dad absolutely loved. He could sing that. He did not have a good voice. Dad, if you can hear me, sorry, but you know it too. It was not a good voice, but he sang it with such enthusiasm. Right? And it's wonderful to have these experiences with our spiritual guides. You know, sometimes our angels also speak to us from the silence. Sometimes it's our angels that will say our name right out loud. If you've ever been in a time of despair or a time of great joy, all of a sudden the voice comes through and shouts your name or says your name, and you know you're not alone, and it's just enough to pick you up out of the dumps or to make you start dancing even harder in the joy. Angels are very much alive as energies, I believe, from the heart and mind of the Creator. Messengers. I believe that our guides in spirit are the same thing. The ascended masters, the ascended teachers, Yeshua ben Joseph, Siddhartha, we call him the Buddha. All of those voices. I once had a lady say to me, you know, Denise, I'm not Catholic. And I was quite surprised, she said, but the other night I had a dream, and in the dream, Mary came to me in the dream. And I saw her, and she was beautiful, and this woman started to weep as she was telling me this. And she told me how much I'm loved. And I looked at her and said, but I'm not Catholic. And I chuckled and I said, and how did she respond to you in your dream? She said, she looked at me. Her eyes were extraordinary. She looked at me and she said, the mother and the father of all things don't care your religion. You are loved. You are loved. And she looked at me and she said, I didn't grow up Catholic. I grew up Southern Methodist. We don't do that whole thing with Mary. I said, well, how do you feel about that right now? Do you feel it's just a Catholic thing? She said, no. I talk to her every day, and honestly, Denise, sometimes I can feel her responding to me. Sometimes it's almost like I can feel her and I can hear her reminding me that I'm loved. It doesn't matter, I'm loved. Yeah, that's a multi-layered experience right there. That's the part about being open and accepting. You know, and if in that case, Mary was the personification of the female Godhead, or the feminine aspect of the Godhead, one that she recognized, even in her Southern Methodism. Right? It's magnificent. People will say, well, you know, I ask my guides, I ask mom and dad to talk to me, and they don't talk to me. Why don't they talk to me? I want to hear their voice. I want to be with them. I want to experience that. Why won't they talk to me? Well, sometimes we can be clouded by emotion, which makes the communication harder. I mean, we know in our physical life, if we are all emotional about something, grieving or just emotional, there is a wall. There is an energetic wall around us that's hard for physical people to penetrate, let alone the non-physical. So sometimes it's when the grief subsides a little bit. And sometimes it's because maybe they're not going to talk to you, and don't take it personally. Maybe they're going to send you a vision or a song on the radio. Be open, be accepting. Well, you're not talking to me, so I guess you're not fine, or you didn't love me after all because you're not talking to me. Yes, people really say those things. And what about our furry little four-leggeds, right? Three-leggeds, the feathery ones. Oh, yeah. They're very aware. The other day, Todd actually saw Merlin in the house. I ran into him in the kitchen and his eyes were all watery, and I said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "I just saw Merlin." I said, "You did?" He said, "I just saw him." I said, "Well, how was he?" Oh, he was feisty and full of it and happy. That little tail, that little nub was just wagging away. Sometimes those voices and those visitations move us to tears. Sometimes tears of sadness mixed with tears of joy, and sometimes tears of joy mixed with a little sadness. Can be very moving. Yeah. Rob is saying he's had mystical experiences through Catholicism, though he was raised Protestant, and now he is pagan. Yeah, there's a lot of mysticism in Catholicism. So I am grateful that I was trained up in that way, because there is a lot of mysticism and it is talked about, and I think we're always led to the people that can help us with that when we're ready to be helped with it, right? But yeah, good stuff. Those voices that come to us, whether they are angelic, our little four-leggeds, or feathery ones, or what have you, the trees speak to us. You ever have that experience? Well, that's when people really give you the look, right? The fisheye. What do you mean that tree talked to you? Well, sometimes it's not a voice that says, "Hey, lady, come over here," right? It's not that kind of voice. But it's the voice that's a vibration that says, "Come on over here and sit by me. Come on over here and it's okay to hug me. Come on over here. There's a treasure around my roots waiting for you." And you find the really beautiful feather. And you're like, well, wow. If I hadn't paid attention to the voice of the tree or the inspiration of the tree that said, "Dana, come on over here," I wouldn't have found that magnificent feather. Sometimes the voices lead us on a treasure hunt. Yeah, that happened up at Devil's Tower in Wyoming a few years back. Todd and I were hiking up on Devil's Tower, and he said, "Let's go this way." And I said, "No, let's go this way. Let's go this way." We found a treasure trove. We didn't take the treasure trove, but we found a treasure trove. of eagle feathers and such. We didn't take them, but we did bask in the energy of them. We got to a point where actually the thunderbirds, the vultures, were flying beneath us. So we stood up on this point watching an entire flock of thunderbirds swooping and flying beneath our feet. That's a treasure. Listening to the voice of intuition and the voice of the spirits there at Devil's Tower or Greyhorn. We followed that voice and we had that experience. Sometimes the voices will lead you to the most amazing adventures. Anybody who travels with me knows that we always listen to the voice that says, go left and not right, because there's a really great adventure waiting up ahead. Can't wait to be in Ireland in 3 weeks. Not only... Oh, okay. Cindy Lynn is saying, I will frequently see my cat Whiskers. Yeah, in any place I live when I'm feeling down or needing comfort. Oh, Nikki had to put Rudy down. Oh, and a white dove flew in front of the car. Oh, as they were going to look at a memorial piece. See? Yeah, everything is alive. Everything has a voice, and it might not be a voice like the one you're listening to coming out of me this morning, but the voice can be a feeling, it can be an octave, it can be an inspiration that says, let's go this way. Let's go that way. Sometimes we hear a voice and the voice just wants to be heard. We may not even know really who it's attached to. The voice just wants to be heard. But if you do hear a voice that calls out your name, Cindy Lynn, Cindy Lynn, and you're like, well, I don't recognize that voice. You can ask, are you my angel? Are you an ancestor? Are you a spiritual guide? And pay attention to your intuition when you get the answer. Maybe you'll get, no, I'm just passing through and I know you can hear me. Right? That's great for seers and sensitives, because on the other side, spirit and beings in spirit know that we can see and we can hear. Oh, Dominic is tormenting Gabriel. There you go. Yeah. Listening to the voice. Sometimes the voice is a passerby that says, just passing through, and I know that you can hear me. Katie is saying, a man's voice wakes me up in the middle of the night. Yeah, you can ask, who are you? If you don't like the feeling and you don't like the answer, you can say, well, you're not welcome here. Own it. Own that. Yeah, meow mama. Oh, my goodness. If anyone would have told me, right? I think more of us are animal communicators than we know. I think more of us are spiritual communicators than we know. We just have to be open, have an open heart, and understand that the non-physical world is every bit as real as our physical world. And to be open to it, but to be smart about it. You know, every day I invite my angels to be present, to guide and guard, and my spirit guides. I don't want just any wayward spirit floating through. I have enough of those already. And before I go to sleep at night, same thing. Thank you for protecting me and watching over me while I'm sleeping. Thank you for being here so that I don't just have a railroad station coming on through with passersby 24/7. What I'm really talking about is our own personal relationship with spirit. And saying thank you and not holding on so tightly that they're not able to move forward on their journey, but hanging on just enough so they know that they're always welcome to come and visit. On Monday, one of my friends said to me, "So Dee, since you never physically met your biological father in this lifetime, what was it like to go to the cemetery? Did you see him? How was that? Usually, we all know our parents. We've seen him." And I said, "Oh no, I saw him. He was right there. Very relaxed and very happy. Enjoying the day, enjoying that I was there, that we connected." And all of that began with a dream and hearing his voice for the very first time 7 years ago in a dream. And being open in that dream, he said to me, "There's going to come a day, Dana, when you're going to meet the women in your family. Be open to that. The day is coming." I had no idea what he meant, but obviously I remembered it. And so when the day came and they found me, thank you, Danielle, I remembered the day is coming. I was so happy. And I had already seen him in the dream, and he was exactly the way that he looked in life. And there he was at the cemetery, handsome as all get out and happy and healthy and whole, working his way back to the realm of the ancestors, doing his stuff, because we all have stuff and work to do and learning and experiences. And, sometimes we think this human life is like the bomb diggity. This is all that there is. This is all that our soul experience gets to experience, and this is as good as it gets. Well, it isn't. There's still a lot of good as it gets, probably more, actually. Once we leave this human experience, when we have all sucked out all the juiciness of this human experience, and we go on to the next one, it's just as juicy, it's just as passionate and flavorful and full. And I hope, when it's my turn to be on that side, nobody's holding me back with a bunch of whatever. Right? I got stuff to do, people. I love you and I'll come visit, but I got stuff to do. I have experiences to have. Yeah, you are right about that, Katie. Have a great day, Katie, by the way, up there at the post office. Katie's a postmaster. I love that. When I think about Katie, I think about, oh my goodness, all the mail that goes in and out of her operation up there gets to pass through all that sunshine. How marvelous is that? That's pretty wonderful. Whoever gets a piece of mail that's been through that station, lucky. It is imbued with a lot of joy, a lot of laughter. That's a beautiful thing. But yeah, being quiet. Some people are so chatty. As my former mother-in-law used to say, their mouth goes like a whippoorwill's ass. They never slow down. Actually, those people, for me anyway, are very draining, the people who don't stop talking. Because there's a lot of energy that goes on with talking, and depending on what they're talking about. But that's a whole other show. Being quiet. Sitting still. And if you can't sit still and be quiet at the same time, take a walk. Quiet your body. We don't have to be in full lotus position to be still or to be quiet. Go take a walk. Go swimming. Go fishing. Go do something that quiets your body. Quiets your mind just a little bit. And maybe all you have to do is stop talking. Put the computer away, put the phone away, put the digital stuff away, put the book away, put the magazine away, put it away. Just you and your body and your spirit out for a walk. That's a perfect way to get quiet. To be still. To be open. Our loved ones who cross over the physical veil into the non-physical still love us. They want us to be happy, Of course, we want them to be happy, normally. Forgiveness is good, if there's any dissonance. Unforgiveness does hold people back from journeying forward. It's good to forgive, or at least try to understand. All those stones that weigh us down also weigh down those that we love. When they are freed up from guilt or shame or what have you, have a conversation back. That's okay too. When you hear the voice of your loved one and maybe you still have a beef, you can say that, I still have a beef with you. I just need to get this off my chest. Oh, and by the way. That's okay. Conversation is a two-way street. Hopefully. Communication. Yeah. They love us. They want us to be happy. Even our little four-leggeds, like little Merlin. Isn't that fun? With that, everybody, tomorrow is Lion's Gate, 8/8. August 8th, Lion's Gate portal time. Great time to just sit and listen. Listen to the voice in your heart, the voice in your gut, the voice maybe in your head. If it's telling you to do bad things, I think we've got a problem, Houston. If it's a loving voice, caring voice, concerned voice, acknowledge it. If it's telling you to harm people or harm yourself, time to get some help. Understand that everything is alive, including the flowers and the trees, and they do talk, as do all of the animals and the critters in the universe. They may not speak in a voice that we can understand, but they do speak in an energy and a vibration that we know. With that, everybody, thank you for being who you are and shining the way that you do. Have a magnificent day and shine on. Blessings be.